When life throws you a curveball, how are you going to handle adversity? Welcome to the Fearless Mindset Podcast, where you're about to go on a journey as I interview security, business, and entertainment leaders on what it takes to stay fearless. I'm your host, Mark Ledlow, and enjoy today's episode.
You would need, like you said, 2 agents on that CEO that morning in New York. If you had somebody in the back, he could have run interference, and then the other agent run cover on the guy, get him out of there. Well, he's probably walking on his way from the apartment, wherever he's staying, to his location. So he had a little bug walking. I don't think he even had a vehicle run nearby. He's just...
No, it was a walking move. And just think one advance agent, even ahead of him, might have been able to see the threat actor come out of nowhere. Or let's say you had a close protection officer just shadowing him, 5-7 feet back, might have been able to interdict. It
seems like the perpetrator, he did his homework before he got there. He knew the guy's movements, and he knew where to be at the guy studied. He actually did his own surveillance before he made the move. And I'm like, whoa, the guy did his homework.
He really did. And, as you dissect these assassination attempts, both public and private over the years, the scope of detail that some of these threat actors, are engaged with is just frightening. I'll never forget, Mark, after the first World Trade Center bombing, we started dissecting that attack, and, our office deployed up there for the attack and so forth. And for me, the attack was horrible, but the plots that surfaced post-attack that they considered were more frightening for protectors, meaning the surveillance team had looked at enough motorcades in New York City to know the difference between a State Department motorcade and a Secret Service motorcade. And they put together these scenarios that were right out of a Tom Clancy novel, like, I'm going to hit the protectee as soon as they get out of the well at the Waldorf. Or I'm going to infiltrate a team dressed in hotel uniforms to carry out an attack inside the hotel. I know that there's less protection on the dignitary at night, so let's put together an operation at night. And we never saw it. That's the one takeaway that I always tell folks is here you had hundreds of protectors. You had hundreds of cops on all these details, all these protective details. And none of us ever saw that pre-operational surveillance.
Wow.
So that to me was the scariest part of all that came out of the World Trade Center attack. And, by the grace of God, that was the plot that they decided to go forward with, because I remember looking at some of the scenario scenario-based modeling we did, and they would have been able to be successful in pretty much anything they would have wanted to carry out.
Easily.
And it just stressed to me the importance of observation skills, knowing your geography, knowing how to look for surveillance and threat actors, knowing what threat actors to look for, instead of just going in blind to events consistently.
Right.
And so anyway, we learned some hard lessons in that one.
Yeah, my psychology background just went into overdrive when you're explaining all that. I mean, just human psyche, the study of human nature. I mean, psychology 100 to 400 level to get your associate degree, all in that. Just that conversation right there, just amazing. Just study human behavior.
Yeah, and for me too, I know we haven't seen any details come out of the Thompson murder yet, Mark, but I'd love to know what you've heard on that, meaning...
it's been pretty hush-hush, wrapped up pretty tight.
Based on his fixation on Thompson, it appears, I would not be surprised to learn that he had done some reconnaissance or stalking at his residence.
Oh, yeah. Easily.
In Minneapolis, or I believe it was Minneapolis. And these threat actors travel, right?
Yeah.
So, that's the importance of making sure you got a good database on your threat actors.
I do know the team they had on. I got a call from a guy that had the contract. I'm not going to disclose it publicly on this forum, but they had hired a whole new team, and the team were, I guess, special operators from the military. And due to the cultural adjustment by the military folks, it just wasn't a good fit from what I hear, and they were, I guess, gotten rid of it because they just couldn't blend into the culture of the organization. And so I'm like, that's something interesting. So I might have that individual on the podcast to kind of explain to what happened on there, but again, culture adjustment that the military folks could not adjust to with their organization or something like that.
That would be a fascinating podcast. That would be a good podcast to do if you could get that individual to chat with you on that. I'm not surprised. I've seen the culture. I've seen a lot of us that are in our industry just crash and burn because, we're just not the right culture fit.
Yep, it happens every time.
Right. Or you get into a situation where it's, lack of just basic people skills to know.
One a tier one operator. They don't care. Customer service. If you're in their world, I don't care if you're tier one. Doesn't matter. You're in their world. They write you a check and you get out of their way and kind of disappear so they don't see you. They just don't want to see you. And that's their culture.
Right.
And it's not his way or the highway. If you're providing a service, you got to adapt to that, what they want. Yeah, it's just this big adjustment. I think there's a new generation of protectees coming up. And so probably need some training and some culture training probably to be successful in this line of work. But yeah.
Yeah, and you and I both know in this business too, there's a tremendous amount of facilitation, just getting people in and out without being hassled, to provide value add to the business community or to that CEO, because time is always short with these CEOs, and if you can make them more productive by either driving them or getting them through the back door to an event, is the kind of thing that we routinely do in this business that certainly very much helps.
Yeah, you did a good job with Jack Carr when he came in. He had a little body man on him, escorting him around, and he is a big deal. And I was kind of watching him like, that's good job.
Well, thanks. I'd like to take full credit for that, but that just wasn't me. But, life is easier with a guy like Jack who, he's certainly the kind of person that, gives back to our community, or very pro-military, pro-law enforcement, and probably one of the best keynote speakers we had. I still get notes from folks talking about him as a guest, and he's just an all-around good guy, Mark.
Yes.
I mean, he quietly gives back to the community. He's helped me significantly with my books, putting my books in his books.
Nice.
Which you can't buy that kind of marketing.
No, you can.
And, him, if his protagonist, James Reese is reading one of my books, my goodness, you can't buy that kind of marketing, right?
Yeah, exactly. He was gracious enough to give me some time and come on the podcast and talk about him and the bow and arrow and shooting I think it was a GoPro or something through the eyeball to wings. That was a great shot with the bow and arrow. But he's just, he's a generous guy. And it's, again, networking, getting him at the right room in the right place, meeting him, and he was signing books for everybody, giving them away books. And I'm like, he's just a generous guy. Just got a good heart. That's hard to find in this industry.
Yeah, he really is. He's just a very nice guy. And, his demands with the success he's had with just books and TV and film, and, I can only imagine, the scope of just issues. I mean, but he still makes time, to help and to give back, which that's just the kind of guy he is. And I think us, in our industry, I think we do a good job of helping each other.
Yeah, we do. Absolutely. Like you taking your time out of your day, helping me on the podcast to relaunch some minds and kind of tweak everybody's thought process of going into the new year. And that's generous of you.
Oh my goodness, no! I'm always more than happy to help and try to give back on, and in general, I think we do a great job at sharing intelligence, especially when it comes down to like persons of interest, meaning, the old boy, the old gal network still very much works. So
it does.
Even though corporate legal at times doesn't like those kinds of things shared, in reality, we all know that some of the protectees that we have can drag threats to other venues, and or you have that threat actor. Like for me, just being in this business and looked at so many of these attacks over the years, I'd like to know who else the assassin targeted besides Brian Thompson.
Well, I'm sure you had a checklist, probably of a lot of people. You had to.
Exactly. So, in our industry, that's the kind of list that would be critical to know. Then we've seen these spinoff, deck of cards surface in New York, or CEOs on wanted posters. I mean, it's just frightening.
Yeah. Yeah, she might be right. Maybe there's a new Avenger. There's a new popularity with Avengers going against capitalism, as she says, like a revolution. They're creating a revolution here in the U.S. and by the under 30 age group, and maybe they're just ticked off at capitalism. I don't know. I've never heard of that before, but she brought it up on the podcast. Like, whoa, is there something we're not seeing? Is there new threat indicators that we don't know that really is there? Maybe from the college campuses, maybe from the students. What are they being taught by the college professors, and what philosophies are being? Is that a threat too? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a great question. I know that if I was working, I'm too old to do protection anymore, Mark. But if I was working protection on a CEO going to any public venue, college campus, speaking arrangement, and so forth, I certainly would want some degree of protection at those venues at this moment in time, especially if I'm engaged in a controversial issue and whatever that might be. And I think at times companies forget their board members, meaning if you look at some of these boards, you look at it, it's like the who's who of America are on these boards. And,
names.
Trying to keep track of them as well. I think they also get kind of lost, right? At times, meaning you might think of that protection for the CEO or COO, but not necessarily the board members as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more conversation, like you said, with the board members and the C-suite than ever before because of that shooting. And I think there's like a heightened awareness to everybody's like Texas. I mean, they're all these executives sitting in her chair saying how freaked out they were. I don't want to get shot because I have a company. I don't want to be put on an X on social media because my company does $1 billion.
Right. Or I'm manufacturing some degree of hardware or software for the U.S. military or the intelligence community in some capacity, or I'm engaged in a brand that has gotten some adverse media, whatever that might be in today's world. Capturing those signals to me is fascinating. I'd love to know more about the assassin in New York that killed the CEO, just who else he thought about. And, in me talking to certain threat actors over the years, they always think of multiple targets. And then they hone down or weed down who it is they might want to target, usually predicated upon ease of operation or lack of security. And,
so they're doing their own surveillance on their prey.
Yeah, exactly. They're doing their own, digital surveillance to begin with. And then weeding that down to see who is more vulnerable, who's the creature of habit, who was always departing their residence at 7:30 in the morning and, heading to work. And, those kinds of threat actors, they're not stupid by any stretch of the imagination. And, I was just rereading the case involving Adolf Kors, the Kors exec that was kidnapped back in the 60s. And
I remember that, yeah.
And his threat actor, he was bound for medical school, had a genius IQ.
Wow.
And, single-handedly put together that operation, but it conducted days of surveillance on Kors before figuring out the spot to try to kidnap him from. And if you dissect any of these attacks, Mark, they're all very similar, meaning these folks spend hours studying their prey.
So they do their homework before they strike.
Exactly. So if you got a good security team, good, trained in observation skills and time and distance variables and counter surveillance, you should be able to spot them ahead of time.
That's why surveillance is so critical.
Exactly.
Before you get the bodies out there, get that team out there moving around, snooping, catch them before they move. I think the SEALs even do that overseas. The Delta Force even does that.
Of course, yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah, just this conversation alone, it's just I think reemphasize the need for intelligence, the need for proper surveillance, skilled people with surveillance to see the enemy before they see us. And the cartel does it all the time.
They do. Criminals do it all the time.
They're a study. Yeah. They have mastered the art of human behavior, studying that human behavior before they make a strike.
Right. And I think sometimes in our business, and heck, I've been guilty of this myself, even as a cop and as an agent and as a protector. Well, who's going to try to come after us? I'm on the right side here, right? I've got a gun, I've got a badge, or I've got a team, and there's a little bit of overconfidence at times on our part, I think.
It's almost like you have to go under the weeds and become covert, become a conspicuous person that nobody would pick up on their radar, and just go collect information, start asking a bunch of questions, and become a auditor, become a whoever. You go into the opposition's team and find out what their next move is. And I remember I was working a strike in Oakland, California for a company, and the detail leader, I think one of the owners told, I was working, shout out to Nick Barbarian, is GS3 had the contract, and the detail leader said, "Hey, Nick, why don't you go talk to the reporter to do some intelligence gathering, find out what the striker is going to do." So he spent all morning going to get donuts and coffee and all that. He just disguised himself, went over there, and oh man, he got all kinds of intelligence. We knew how long they're going to be there, what their shifts were going to be, who was what, and just we already had them figured out before we had their game plan for the week in our hands.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I was like, whoa, that was brilliant, actually. But yeah, I remember Nick and I were standing post back then, and Nick's got that Rico Suave kind of personality, get that dark complexion, attracted to the ladies, and he went to the reporter, and you just squeeze in information, not too hard, and it's like, whoa, this stuff actually works.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do if you just try to blend in and ask questions, right?
Yeah, get rid of the suit. I just put on some normal clothes and spent a morning just taking notes, and then like, okay, we know what they're going to do. We know who's who. All right, is an investment in the project. Right.
That's good work.
But those 12-hour days, they sucked on your feet, though, for fighters. Man, I haven't stood posted, I don't know how long, but man, that was painful. That was back in my 30s. That intelligence is powerful, done correctly.
Yeah, you can't run a program without it today, Mark. You can't.
Yeah, and Chris emphasized that on the podcast, too. In order to build a program, you got to have intelligence. I mean, that's what you guys are so good at on Ontic. Wow. That was a meaty podcast, and there's so much value. I mean, this will probably be one of the most listened to podcast of the year, I'm sure. There's a lot of meat to it.
I hope so.
Are you working on any TV projects or any movies or any books on the side?
Oh my gosh, all of the above. I've got. I'm under an NDA for my TV projects, but stay tuned on that.
Well, congratulations!
Thank you. Same with a related film story.
Wow, getting into Hollywood, are you?
Well, all of my books have been optioned, and it's really a very interesting business, Mark. I've gotten a lot smarter with books, and I'm getting a little smarter, though I'm not really that bright when it comes to the TV and film industry. But I look at the life cycle of a book now as to, can it also be sold for entertainment rights? And fortunately, I've been blessed with mine to be able to do that. And then I've got a couple more books that should be coming out this year. 2025. COVID really slowed down the publishing industry. The wildfires have slowed down the entertainment industry. The horrific wildfires in LA.
Yeah.
Horrid, because pretty much everybody engaged in that business lost their home or has been, set off course. And so I appreciate the opportunity to share that, but stay tuned for more on that. I hope to put some info out on social media here pretty soon on some updates on all of the above.
So it'd be probably your Instagram and LinkedIn, probably.
It'd be on Instagram and X.
Okay.
Instagram, LinkedIn, and X.
Okay, we'll stay tuned for that announcement. That's exciting. You're going to have your own detail here pretty soon the way you're going. You and Jack Carr working in Hollywood together on his
a new bunker.
A new bunker. Too funny. Yeah, you and Carr and Trot motivate me because I love your entrepreneur mindset and just creating stuff all the time. Your minds are always in creative mode. It's a motivator.
Well, at my age, Mark, the hourglass of time is turned against me. So I'm trying to crank them out as quickly as I can.
Man. And then you work in Ontic and too on the side. And I don't know how you and Chuck and all those guys do it over there. You guys just nonstop. Chuck's over in England right now, going over there for the violence thing.
Yeah, I know he's always all over the place. He's like the mayor when it comes to the protection business. He's literally everywhere. We were together at Nashville for the IPSB where you and I, shared some coffee and chatted, and
it was fun.
That was a good event and
great turnout. Great work out there.
Yeah, I think 360 Privacy did a great job, as one of the sponsors for that event. And
absolutely.
It was very well attended.
Was that a record attendance?
I believe it was. And I thought the speakers were great.
Absolutely.
I thought everybody did a good job. It was a good venue site, and Chuck Tobin and company, did a real good job with that. And, it's hard putting on these events, as you know, it's difficult.
Volunteer army. All those guys are volunteer and went to Nashville for 5 days. And, the value I see it, I call it holy communion for the EP folks. Just getting together, having dinner, catching up, and and just it's forging those relationships and creating that, building that trust, and just buying dinner for everybody, and just getting together and just talking and sharing and getting to know each other personally at a personal level.
No, I think you're right. And I've just watched that organization grow.
Absolutely.
It's shown some phenomenal growth and so forth. Some of these events to me are just getting too big,
I can see that.
Like GSX and even OSAC, they're kind of overwhelming. Yep. And, I was around at State when the first OSAC started.
Oh, wow.
And I think that was better than 40 years ago now. And,
so almost you go in stimulation overload, because I'm naturally an introvert, and I go into these environments, and I'm like the third day, do you find yourself just exhausted, ready to crash out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm good for about 2 days, and that's about it. If it drags into 3 or 4 days, it's just too long for me.
Yeah, you have to replenish the brain cells because you're giving, serving, and talking, and then you have everybody coming at you at one time in 2 days, and then you're just like, whoa, just wiped out.
Yeah, it is a little bit overwhelming.
But yeah, OSAC seemed to be, I think it does a record of 10. I heard 2,000 people over there in the Amazon headquarters, something like that.
Yeah, it was just overwhelming. It was, I mean, Amazon did a great job. Kudos to TJ at Amazon for letting them use that facility. I can, as you know, to manage that kind of special event is just difficult and a lot of work and logistics behind that and so forth. But the sidebar meetings of there were interesting and good and so forth. But
come a long way.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it really is. I had the new OSAC director on our podcast.
I saw that.
Which just Jerry, and he, managing that today is a lot more difficult than it's like managing a small Olympic kind of event, right?
Oh yeah, easily, totally.
So, but OSAC has really, really done a good job. The first OSAC was very small, and they had full-time analysts and also a couple contractors, but nothing like it is today.
Yeah, it's just crazy, just the level of people. Like Mark Beason came with me and goes, holy cow, this is like networking on steroids. This is the best conference ever. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty great. You got the best of the best going to OSAC. And of course, we sponsored the dinner there. And then Renee Strayer came out from LA and she was like, whoa, this is a different level. I'm like, yeah, this is where all the brilliant minds are hanging out. And Leon Panetta did a great job at keynote speak there, giving a talk on just government and all that type of thing.
Yeah, that was a great talk. That
brilliant mind.
Yeah, former DCI Panetta gave, and he did a wonderful job with that.
Sitting in the room with giants, as I say, I'm like, this is crazy. It makes you raise your game level. That's why I told my team, hey, you got to come, you got to see this, because this is the level where you learn. And I feel like a student, when I'm in those environments, I'm like, I feel like I'm a rookie in the industry, getting around these big giants.
Well, we all are in those kinds of venues. You learn and you pick up things that you haven't thought about.
Exactly. Well, audience, I don't want to take up too much time of Fred Burton. I know he's busy running other operations and his work stuff and his duties over there. And I appreciate his time on the podcast. And you can reach him on LinkedIn, Fred Burton, and you're on Instagram too, right, Fred?
I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and X.
X, okay. And so reach out to him, follow his stuff, what he's doing, and he'll be releasing some movie stuff here soon. That's going to be a big deal for him. Going to be going to Hollywood, I'm sure, and doing some cool stuff. And we'll see about that. And we just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube last night.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. I found some little tricks in the back end on YouTube, so I think it might be working. And of course, it's increasing our audience on the podcast. We're global now, and I don't even know what the listener count is right now. I don't even keep track. And but thanks for supporting the podcast, folks. And the Fearless Mindset, you can find it on all the podcast platforms, and give us a rating on Apple and the different platforms that the podcast is on. If you need anything, give Fred Burton a shout. If you need him you can reach out to him on LinkedIn. And if you need security support, reach out to us directly at mark@ledlowsecurity.com. And I hope you enjoyed the show, folks. And thanks for your time. And going on to season 5 of the podcast. Who would have thought? Thanks again, folks, for your time. And we'll see you on the next show. Take care.